Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Community and Sport Committee meeting for the 13th of August 2024. Just noting councillors in attendance, the entire committee is here today. I'll proceed to the acknowledgement of country. Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land and waters we share. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging as the keepers of the traditions, customs, cultures and stories of proud people. Just proceeding on, do any councillors have any declarations of interest to make in a matter on the agenda today? There being no declarations, I'll move to business outstanding, of which there is nil. As such, we will proceed to the confirmation of minutes. I'll seek a mover from the floor for the confirmation of minutes, moved by Councillor Augustine and seconded by Deputy Mayor Johnnick. Any discussion on those minutes this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Our first officers' report this morning is the Ipswich Library Survey Report 2023-2024. Are there any questions for the relevant officers this morning? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for the report. Moved by Councillor Augustine and seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Any discussion this morning on the Library Services Report? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. This is always a really important report for us. Councils invest significant money, millions into our library, so it's really important that we're spending it the right way and that it is delivering those services. So it's great to see that actually 1,500 people gave their time to complete the survey, which I think shows, how connected our community is to our libraries. We're all impacted by the cost of living, and our libraries can be counted on to provide really important services for individuals and families for free. The majority of respondents said the most important service was being able to borrow books, DVDs and music. This is followed by assistance from library staff and opening hours. So thank you to the staff in the libraries for being so approachable and so helpful. One respondent, if I can quote them, says, "My love of reading has recently been reignited and I definitely credit Ipswich Libraries for that. I use the e-book and audiobook services every week and love coming to the amazing children's library with my kids." By way of improvement, there are some great suggestions from residents. They'd like to see more resources and improved collection. They'd like to see digital resources as well as more events and programs. I think we've got the Inspiration Hour with Tony Jones this week down at Springfield Libraries. Overall, those surveyed expressed a satisfaction rating of 92%. So well done to the teams who make our libraries such a welcoming and informative place to be.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion from the committee? That being the case, I'd just like to acknowledge some of our library staff here today and thank you for your wonderful work. The Libraries branch is just a wonderful service for our community, and yeah, we're really lucky to have you all and the service you provide. Thank you.
Font of all knowledge they are.
Yeah. That being the case, I will move that I'll proceed to the vote that the recommendation be adopted. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Item 3 today is a notice of motion from myself for an establishment of a Libraries and Customer Services Advisory Committee. As such, I'd like to move the entirety of the motion just to start some discussion and gather who would like to potentially be a member. Is there a seconder for that motion today? Seconded by Councillor Johnnick. In speaking to the motion, I consider it fairly self-explanatory. Our Libraries and Customer Services team need to collect the views of councillors on what our major projects are in libraries moving forward. We, as of yet, have not adopted a library strategy that many of us will be aware of from the previous couple of years. I consider it a good step forward to collect the councillors most interested in libraries, get them up to speed in a detailed way and work with the library staff to outline what the future opportunities are and what level of investment the council is willing to make by working with all councillors. For everyone's awareness, the advisory committee would report to this committee. It would have no decision-making authority delegated. It would be fully minuted with a report that would be transparent and outline all matter discussed and any direction given by the members. and then it would proceed to the committee to consider whether or not to adopt it before going to the council. The advisory committee would be open to the public for attendance. Happy for any other suggestions from the committee on how they'd like it to proceed. But I've felt personally from my 4.5 years of experience as a councillor that at times strategies are prepared and things go off into the ether, and there isn't enough coming together of the elected body and the bureaucracy to use our collective talents and understanding of what the community wants to craft something. So that being said, I'm happy for anyone else to discuss the matter this morning.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at this, obviously they're new advisory committees, and I'm just wondering what kind of value they will add. I guess when I look at the other advisory committees in our council, the regulatory one sits under the Finance and Governance Committee. It's dealing with just with local laws. There's the Advocacy Advisory Committee, which is just part of the Economic Development and Cultural Development. So it's, again, another subset. I guess my concern is between the libraries and customer services and the next one coming to us, which is sport, it kind of feels like about 80% of the portfolio. So I'm just, I guess I'm trying to work out what the value is rather than why wouldn't we use this committee to do the work when it's such a big, it's basically about 80% of the portfolio.
Well, I disagree with the characterisation of it being 80%, respectfully. The entire purpose is that we've got strategies and investment decisions to make that need a high level of consultation with councillors regarding what we want to look at with things like library pods on a minor level to what we want to do in terms of a Ripley library and a Springfield library into the future. We don't own that site. There's some examples of rather large projects that the council needs to understand and form a view on. I myself sort of sit before us and go, I'm not necessarily sure that we'll end up with one strategy. We may end up with different plans or things to progress it. I'm not wedded to any significant path forward, but I just want to also reiterate that we're talking about some detailed matters here and detailed discussions and a high level of content that would likely not be befitting of a committee meeting day. I don't think there's scope for this committee to start meeting for 3 hours every other month necessarily, but I take on board your views. Respectfully disagree that it's a large chunk, but I think everyone can actually be assured that the reporting and the transparency will absolutely be there. All councillors, even who aren't members, will be informed of everything that's happening, the agenda shared. They can attend as observers if they don't opt in as a member of the committee. And yeah, there's always the opportunity for that committee to go and do community consultation and all sorts of things. But we really need to get a brief across all of the decisions that need to be made, form a view of how we prioritise them, and then look at how it's going to be funded. And that's a substantial undertaking in its own right.
I guess I have the view that that should be done at this committee. It is I think then you look at the community and sports portfolio, that the libraries, customer service and sports is that, as you know, again, I guess we'll agree to disagree, as you said, is basically the bulk. I think it's everything in those portfolios except for community development. The advisory councils aren't live streamed, and I guess I have that worry with transparency and just about how communications are going to occur, because I won't sit on these. I don't have the time to sit on these, so how do I make sure that I'm across my duties? I feel as though that these, the very topics, that the very things you're looking at should come to council. In fact, like any other committee, they could be workshopped and briefed like we do with other committees and then brought forward to this committee. So that's that. I guess that's, to me, it's a really important, the work that you're talking about is a really important work of this committee.
Yeah, and so I'd reiterate again that the advisory committee would report to this committee to make a decision with its report. It's not circumventing this committee in any way.
Okay. I guess I'll just have to have those conversations at the committee. So we'll have to bring up all the matters.
Yeah, or if...
and just repeat it.
Look, in terms of scheduling, we'll do our best to schedule at times that all councillors can attend. There's no way that we... yeah, we can absolutely do that. as well.
Thank you, Chair.
A brief concern of mine is I think the advisory committee structure is better for councillors to share their views and be captured than the way briefing sessions have run historically. And I think I see a lot more promise in advisory committees than how workshops have been used in the past. So in terms of my preference, I think it'll capture everyone's views and proceed accordingly.
Through you, Chair. So I understand the Mayor's commentary in relation to her concerns about the size and scale, I guess, and then it being taken outside of the powers of this committee. However, I see the need for us to initiate some of these actions because of from what we've seen in limited communication and other matters in previous committees just today, and that's due to no fault of anyone's. It's just part of processes that we need to get better at, and I think that doing this is initiating better channels to be able to communicate and brief and get the people involved that really have a certain passion for these different matters. So I understand the Mayor's concerns in relation to them not being specific, like City DAC or like IMPAG or various things, but I understand the Chair's need to see some action in these different areas because we've been having conversations about this for years. So, and there's no authority within these committees to make decisions. It's just advisory only. So, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Antonelli?
Yeah, again, just on the matters that the Mayor raised. Look, I think the future, if we're going to have bold visions going into the future, these advisory committees are where they're going to be established. Committees and council meetings are highly prescriptive. As everybody that's here watching online or here in person can see, there's strict rules governing how we speak, what we do, etc., etc. And the reports that come up to us are officer-driven reports. These advisory committees enable us to, as councillors, bring into the council much of the ideas that we may have had ourselves through the election process or the community has brought to us, or they may even be our own ideas. But if we don't have that capture of ideas, we're not going to move forward with any great vision as a council. So I am a true believer that the libraries of councils are one of the most attended locations or services that a council can provide. You take them away, there will be a hue and cry. In fact, more often than not, there's a push for more libraries. And what I see going forward as our city grows, if we're not looking at ways to value add to that library experience, then we're going to be caught behind in general with respect to our library provision of services in libraries. So what I like about the advisory committee is it's an opportunity for us to brainstorm ideas, put forward things that we're passionate about and the community are passionate about. And this is probably, these advisory committees, a greater opportunity than even working groups and briefings, which again are primarily driven by officers. And again, no offence to officers or anything like that at all, but there needs to be a vessel or an opportunity for the community and council to inject these sorts of fresh ideas and opportunities so that we can look towards a brighter future. Thank you.
I should add to that, Councillor Antonelli, my view of it is that it would also present a regular platform for the officers to get an understanding of what the council wishes to consider. Sometimes it's quite sporadic, the engagement, due to the various processes and how timeframes occur. So just for them to know what the goalposts are and where the council's looking and what we all consider achievable. Any further discussion before? Yep, Mayor.
And thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come back. I guess the terms of reference for the committee are very clear. The chair and the CEO do drive the agenda. So if people are feeling that councillors aren't, that's up to councillors to do that. I guess so much of what is in the community and sports portfolio sit in these two advisory committees. I'd ask what's the point of this particular committee is what I'd ask. I am concerned at the lack of transparency because it won't be live streamed, and potentially there's going to be matters that are discussed and how do I make sure? So I guess I ask you, Chair, how will you communicate with me and other councillors who aren't on that advisory committee to make sure that we're up to speed on matters?
Well, everyone will be shared agendas as occurs for other advisory committees. Everyone will receive reports of what occurred. I must say I reject the imputation about there being a transparency issue. If anything, there's been a reasonable period of notice for this notice of motion, and you've only raised these concerns with me today. So I think that's a bit of an issue for us to improve upon. The view was formed on the other advisory committees in terms of live streaming. There's no plan to take anything away from the community. It's just to have the discussion, report it, and then refer to the Community and Sport Committee to make recommendations for council. So no decisions are being made, or anything that's to be considered or discussed will be captured through that reporting process and in a public report at the following Community and Sport Committee. So for me, that's quite a robust level of reporting.
I guess the reason why I was asking about how the communications will be that obviously you raised a month ago that this would be a notice of motion. At no stage at the last month have you called me to discuss it. I ended up texting you this morning and you did respond, but that's why I'm asking what will the communications be like, because that didn't happen as part of this.
Mayor, that will not be how the group functions, but for the purposes of self-defence, I must say that there's been a number of mayoral minutes over the last 4.5 years where you haven't communicated with me, some of them recently. So if that's something you want to improve upon, I think it's something we all need to improve upon.
I agree.
Sure.
If I may, to interject, because I think the subject is going.
Could I respond to that, Chair?
Yes, you may.
A mayoral motion is usually for one matter. I would say, Chair, that this is an ongoing advisory committee, but looking at things that are, hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's why that's my view. So I think to compare an advisory committee to a one-off mayoral motion, I think is not probably apples with apples.
We're talking about a number of mayoral minutes over a number of years. We're not talking about one instance. Yeah. Councillor Antonio.
I hate to interject, I really do. And through the chair, if I might say, and I'll clarify a couple of things, because I think the important thing, particularly for those who are intending to watch this session, there are numerous meetings, be they briefings, working groups, and other advisory committees that meet in this council where it is not live streamed. To suggest that creates an issue for transparency would be erroneous, and I don't think that would be the case in this instance. And the major reason for that is it is an advisory committee. It is not a decision-making committee. The decision-making committees, which is this standing committee, as are the other standing committees meeting today and the council meeting, they're the ones where we make decisions. And that is live streamed, that is recorded, and there is certainly no transparency issues in relation to that. And considering that advisory committees report back to this forum, or whichever standing committee they report to, ensures that transparency is maintained. I support the need for, particularly this, if we're going to talk to this particular item number, I certainly think that this is long overdue. And if we can potentially move to filling the positions on that committee, I would much prefer we did that. And in doing so, I would would like to nominate the Deputy Chair of this committee to be on that Library Committee, if I could, in Pi Augustine, please. Councillor Augustine.
All right, we'll capture a number of you. I'll allow you to reply in a moment, but just for the purposes of procedure, if everyone just wants to indicate whether or not they have an interest, I myself, I'd like to chair the committee, and then I'll suggest an amendment that accommodates everyone's wishes.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to move the ball if I...
Sorry, I was going to say thank you, Councillor Antonelli, and I will accept that that nomination. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I open the floor for anyone, members who are interested.
A few words, Chair. I think we mentioned the word libraries a lot, but in the motion it's the establishment of the Libraries and Customer Services Advisory Committee. And I don't receive complaints about our customer services, but every time I get in the lift and I see our staff going out, hitting the coalface, I appreciate the tough job they have. But in saying that, everything can be improved, and I think this would be a great vehicle for councillors to have, gentle input into how we can improve not only our library services but our customer services. So I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Certainly, if the committee wishes to undertake work with the community services part of the council, that would be able to happen through the advisory committee.
Customer services.
Yep.
Sorry.
What did I say? Customer services. And as such, it'll have the same reporting framework rather than other matters with other mechanisms which don't have that sort of reporting. Would you like to be a member, Councillor Madden? Yep. Any other members of the committee?
Through the chair, I'd like to nominate Councillor Antonelli to be on the committee.
All right, Councillor Johnnick and Mayor Harding, any interest?
No, I won't have the time, sorry.
I would like to be a member, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnnick. I am. I would suggest for the meeting clerk, who's doing a wonderful job, just amending the motion, should you accept, Councillor Antonelli, to include myself, Councillor Madsen, as the chairperson and Councillor Augustine as the deputy chairperson. Is the committee happy with that amendment? Does that capture our discussion?
Definitely.
Happy.
That being the case, Councillor Antonelli has accepted the amendment. No, Councillor Antonelli was the... No, Councillor Johnnick, apologies, you were the seconder. All right, any last discussion before voting? Summarise? All right, I think it's sufficiently exhausted. We'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? Looking around the chamber, that's myself, Councillor Madsen, Councillor Augustine, Deputy Mayor Johnnick, Councillor Antonelli and Councillor Madden. Those against? Mayor Harding. Right, our next motion is very similar. It's a notice of motion for the establishment of Sport and Recreation Advisory Committee. I think we've touched on a number of things. I would just suggest that we have a number of major projects the council's been considering over a number of years, including an indoor sports facilities plan, a large sports hub, such as what Fraser Coast and Redlands and other councils have considered. We also have a number of sport and recreation issues which continue to occur for us, in that it was touched on in an earlier committee today, where council receives the handover of wonderful sporting fields and facilities, and then through the virtue of all the different mechanisms, it's then a race to try and find funding for a sports clubhouse. So there's a large degree of planning that would benefit the Sport and Recreation Department for the council to look at how we can better streamline those so that the clubhouse is delivered in parallel as one such piece of work, so that people can utilise playing fields because there's facilities there that are sufficient. Those are all the sorts of matters. I would just gather, I think an advisory committee for sport and recreation is beneficial because matters like indoor sports facilities require significant investment, and the council itself actually has to form a view whether or not we want a strategy in that space. We may actually want to assist third-party projects.
Has
That's
this
a
been moved
discussion.
and seconded?
Hey?
Chair, has this been moved and seconded?
Okay.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Antonelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Johnnick.
Feel free to continue discussion.
So yeah, there's a variety of things where they're probably not progressed enough for us to consider where the priorities are. So I think we need some long-running, consistent meetings with our sport and recreation officers and interested councillors to work together on, get a firm understanding of what's achievable, what sort of financial impost would be required, and then go through the committee and the council meeting and the budget process to formalise something. Any discussion from anyone else this morning? Councillor Johnnick?
I concur with you, Chair. So I guess my take on it is there's so many balls in the air when it comes to sports and delivering facilities and maintaining facilities, interacting with clubs and other sporting organisations. We've seen the Aquatic Centre strategy come to council, the previous council, bringing all of that together under our umbrella of responsibility and having a mechanism to be able to openly discuss and do that with input from the community. Like, I think this is where we need to go for us to do our job properly, so we have a better understanding of the needs and then our responsibilities. Yep. That makes sense? Thank you.
Yep. Any further discussion?
Thank you, Chair. I guess just ditto from the previous one. I have a strong view that this should be coming to this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Augustine?
Thank you, Chair. I have the opinion that this needs to happen, this committee. Just looking at the sports side of the council, from my knowledge and experience out in the community, the one thing that that I must say, especially from a football, soccer terms point of view, we are actually the envy of a lot of clubs in Brisbane and everywhere. When they talk about fields, that people know, clubs, organisations know that Ipswich have got really, really great maintained fields. But in saying that, there is also there is the have and the have-nots, like what, you know, and I think that we need to bring that together. That's one of the things that I would want to create in this advisory sort of committee, is to try and work in a strategy that we can bring it closer together, that clubs that have got, we also need to have the clubs that don't have, to be able to help them go along. There is a lot of, in saying that, I think there's a lot of work to be done in this space. There's, as the Deputy Mayor just said, like there's the Aquatic Centre strategy that was created, but then it's fallen away. So I think there's things like that need to be kept on the radar, so we can keep it front of mind. And we do all the work for this strategy, and then so I'm just grappling with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Augustine. Councillor Antonelli?
Yeah, I just want to, in supporting this, just want to raise a discussion I had yesterday afternoon, which was and really beneficial discussion I had with the General Manager, Ben Pole, which in relation to a number of the problems that sporting clubs do tend to face with council. And certainly where I see this committee as being beneficial is that feedback that we do get from community. Our staff at times, our sport and rec officers at times do get overwhelmed And again, no criticism to our staff because it is a challenging area. So, and the discussion we had yesterday, which spoke to some ideas and some concepts moving forward, they're the sorts of things that perhaps would be very beneficial through the advisory committee and then coming up to council for formal discussion, or through committee for formal discussion to talk to solutions. But unless we have that opportunity to meet in a relatively informal way to discuss those matters, those things may not actually be properly discussed in such formal settings as our committees and council meetings. So that was just a great example of where I think this advisory committee can also be very beneficial to our local sporting clubs.
Thank you, Councillor Antonelli. Councillor Madden.
Chair, I'd just like to point out that we currently have 3 major projects with regard to sporting facilities, and sort of either in Division 4 or near Division 4. And those are the redevelopment of the North Ipswich Reserve, the redevelopment of the Tivoli Sports Centre, and flood recovery works at Blue Gum Reserve, the home of the Curraleigh Tornadoes. And this would be a great vehicle to keep me informed as to what's happening without having to go through the process to ask for a briefing from a council officer. This will be more gentle and more regular. And I'm sure all the other councillors would appreciate being kept up to date with those 3 projects. Yep, I think it's a great idea, and I'll support the motion, and I'll be pleased to nominate as a member.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. So pending, Mayor Harding.
I was just going to clarify, I know, Chair, that Councillor Daly talked about the fact that council sport and rec staff were overwhelmed. I found them to be incredibly capable. They haven't come to me saying they were overwhelmed, so I just want to just clarify that.
Just to clarify, I said at times can be overwhelmed. I didn't necessarily say that they were overwhelmed.
Certainly, my view is that they actually do a wonderful job, and it's probably a case of if in a perfect world we'd have more resources in that branch, and there'd be greater financial support for sporting projects. But yeah, it is actually a lot that they provide to the community. So there's a lot of expectation, which they manage quite well in my view. Proceeding along, pending the approval of Councillor Antonelli and Deputy Mayor Jonik, I'd propose we do the same as we did on the last matter. I'd like to be appointed chairperson if possible. Would you like to be deputy chairperson, Councillor Augustine? I'd leave it to members of the committee to suggest if they'd like to be a member. Councillor Antonelli, Councillor Jonik, Councillor Madden. I'll make sure that ahead of the council meeting it's raised with the councillors who aren't on this committee to see if they have interest in joining us. But as said previously, the meeting agendas, the reports of the meetings, and indeed the attendance of the meetings is open to all councillors and I believe all members of the public. So just wanted to clarify that. Are you accepting of what's on the screen, Councillor Antonelli? Deputy Mayor? All right. Any further discussion from the committee this morning? There being no further discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? Looking around the room, that's myself, Councillor Madsen, Councillor Augustine, Councillor Jonik, Councillor Antonelli and Councillor Madden. Those against? Mayor Harding. The matter is carried. I myself have no matters arising this morning, nor do I have anything else to consider other than the next meeting. Noting the time, I believe a 10-minute break would probably be sufficient. Is that the view of the committee before the next meeting? Yep, a break's not required for morning tea or lunch, so we can just end the meeting now at 11:24. Thank you, everyone.